If I'd been Marcantonio Raimondi, I would have been so freaking proud. I'm tapped by one of the 3 brightest lights of the time. Let's talk Ninja Turtles. 3 brightest lights coexisting at the time are
Leonardo,
bing, 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 bing,
Michelangelo,
bing, 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 bing,
Raphael,
bing, bing, bing,
and sadly, Donatello.
Well, but he's dead by 1466,
Right,
so that didn't even count.
He should have been Titian.
So, yes. Well, Titian does his bit with reproductive prints too.
This is Platemark. My name is Anne Schaefer, and I'm an independent curator specializing in prints and printmaking. You have found us at Series 2 of Platemark, the history, or should I say a history, of prints in the Western world. My co-pilot on this journey is True Ludwig, who is an art historian and artist himself. He brings a unique perspective to the craft. Not only does he understand the historical aspects of it and is, I think, the most curious person I know, but also understands the making of and how an artist would come to create such a thing as a print. This is part 2 of Who Knows How Many on the reproductive print. We began this conversation in the last episode, and I cut it off a little more than halfway through because it went on way too long. So this is the conclusion of that conversation we had. Listeners to Platemark will find any images that we talk about over on the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. Also over on the website, there are several things. One is a small microphone icon, which enables you to leave a comment or ask a question, the length of which could be 60 seconds, and I will do my best to answer you. And there is a support and donate button where you can click to either become a $5 per month member, or you can self-determine a one-time donation. In addition to all of the images and the support and donate button and the microphone, you will find that there's also a click through there to YouTube, where I have been adding video versions of every episode where I'm putting each image in where it belongs in the trajectory of the talk. So you can find all of that stuff over there. You may remember that in part 1 of Reproductive Prints, I beeped out all of the swear words because we swore a lot that night for whatever reason. And I got comments from a couple people who were like, I'd rather hear the swear words than listen to the beeps. So I took the beeps out. If you listen to this out loud, you might consider where and when you're listening and who's around. Okay, let's buckle up and get rolling.
So let's talk about the reproductive print. Here's the slide that I show to every class that I'm trying to teach about Renaissance prints.
All right, there's a lot. There's always a lot in
Bullet
everything.
points.
You can do it.
Interest in classical heritage. You're an Italian. This stuff is all around you. Nobody's been paying attention, but you're interested in it. 2, what's going on with that human body? Wait a minute. We're not ugly, spindly, little sinful flesh sacks. We're actually muscular bodies that move around and have agency. Let's find out what that looks like. Let's figure out how to make things look true to sight, as in perspective. Or does the body look like it's in the space that it should be inhabiting? And the 4th, truth, and I have here, truth to nature, therefore truth to humankind. The medieval era pretty much said, you are a sinful little flesh sack. Don't you ever look at anything real. You are wretched, vile, horrible, awful. The Renaissance said, hey, you know what? God made you. You're beautiful. And your body's interesting, and let's figure out how to represent that. And nature made you look like this, and my job as an artist is to make you look like that.
For
Night
sure.
and day. Those are new things.
That's the thing that people forget about. Just the idea, the concept of what the human body is in space.
Magical?
Yes, it is magical at that point.
I don't care if it's fat, thin, saggy,
Right,
plaid,
doesn't matter.
gigundo.
Well, hey, we are what we
scrawny,
are. Sure.
anorexic, plus size.
Yeah.
It's a miracle.
It is a miracle.
Because God made it.
Whoever that is.
Well, okay, but let's say it's 1400 and you're going, thank you,
The
St.
Pope
Francis.
says so, yes.
Thank you, Pope. The idea that it's okay to be a human being. It's okay to be involved in this earth. It's okay to look at, hey, I'm in Rome and there's all of these weird Roman ruins around me and they have people in them and they look good and some of them are even proportion. I don't know what proportion is, but I'm interested. And I want to know more about that. And you know what? I'm smart. I'm not stupid. The church says one thing. Is it okay for me to have my own thoughts?
I think that's really important. That moment when humanity is allowed to
Agency?
Yes, understand their own agency.
You mean I can make my own decisions? That's not right for me. This is...
Well, think about all of us. Like everybody has shit, right? So, you had issues, everybody has issues, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and you suddenly think, wait a minute, I think I can get out of the situation. I can hopefully get to some place where things are okay, or I can manage it, or whatever it is. Like, you start thinking, wait a minute, I think I can fight back.
This world is a gorgeous place. God made this world.
Well, that's the problem.
I'm in this world.
It's the
I'm
balance.
on this world.
Right. It's the balance between shit is happening to me, but oh my gosh, we are alive in this world.
Nature is good. Nature, it's not a mystery. It's right here and it's beautiful and I can be a part of it. If I were to give you guys the whole sequence, I have this little sequence that I give to my students about how the human body morphed across the 1,000 years between the fall of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance. And you were just a puling little flesh sack. You're a pathetic, dirty, loud.
What a weird... Good Lord.
Don't look at yourself. Can you imagine not looking at your
Incredible.
body and understanding, oh, this is mine. It belongs to me.
Right.
No, you're all vile. But wait a minute. I'm worth something. I can do good things for my community. I can do good things for me. That self-actualization is a part of the renaissance, the rebirth of those concepts of Greco-Roman antiquity. Now, here's the problem. That's not the only answer. But for now, let's just accept that we're going to say, ooh, new way of thinking. Because for now, this is the way I teach art history. I'm trying to grow. But it's a thrilling thing to think that all of those ideas that guys had in the past, like let's say that Plato dude, had an idea about a thing or two. He wrote a couple of books. They were kind of good. They kind of show us who we are. Those actually have application to now. And if I think about those and who I am as a churchy person, I could be okay. I could really think about these things. And so this is all part of this whole new renaissance, the rebirth of what it meant to be a human. And so we're going to go into reproductive printland, and we're going to talk about my friend Montaigne, who is, of course, a god. He's Italian. He's a Renaissance guy. Let's say roughly 1431 to 1506. Andrea Montaigne, brilliant painter.
That's a long life.
What's really cool is that in the 15th century, these dudes that were painting for wealthy clients, they tended to live longer because they had a better life.
Right.
You know why? They had wealthy clients.
Right.
Andrea Montaigne did a cycle of frescoes in a number of places that were brilliant. Montaigne also did I think it was 7 engravings by his own hand that were stunning. But let's talk about Montaigne, the fresco maker, who created a whole cycle of frescoes for the Gonzaga family. And what they did was get this dude named Andrea Andreani do a cycle of 9 prints after Montaigne's Triumphs of Caesar. Now, Montaigne had painted this cycle in tempera for the Gonzaga family, Richie Rich, but Andrea Andreani took those pictures, took those tempera paintings, locked them in his head and went, okay, how do I turn these into chiaroscuro woodcuts into a way that people can read them? And admittedly, this is, 100 years later, this is 1599, in chiaroscuro woodcut.
Wait, but Montaigne didn't ask.
It was after the fact.
Wow.
Because he was
so
already...
some publisher was like, let's make some money
Oh,
on this.
dude, Montaigne is a fucking god.
Right.
Let's make a record of what he freaking accomplished in tempera, which is like, let's you egg, and let's paint on... I'm showing Anne a picture of the first plate, the colophon plate. This is the important plate of Mantegna and the frescoes that he made for the Gonzaga family. We've seen these together. And every time you remember me going, whoa, whoa, because there's 9 plates of this. Big, gorgeous, 4-color.
Monumental.
Yeah! The time we saw them together for sure, I think it was 2008, and it was a large-scale print exhibition that was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art.
Right.
And I think Ryan
was with us.
Reeves, BFK.
Right.
They were all students in my History of Prints class.
Yeah, no, it was
and there was this glorious woodcut on the first wall going into the exhibition. I said, hey, you guys, let's lay down and look at this as if we were looking at it for the first time. And I had 7 people laying on the floor. And the guy just goes, you can't lay there. You know what, though? We were looking at it as though people of that time and day would have looked at these things like, oh my God, it's in full color. You've given us a world of black and white. How is this possible, of all the triumphs of Caesar coming in with the victories of everything he's conquered? Mantegna was one of those artists, those mainstream artists that we have to pay attention to in terms of reproductive printmaking. Well, but he wasn't the first. That's all there is to that. If you think about how Andrea Andreani converted a full spectrum painting in egg tempera into a series of 9 woodcuts, it's thrilling because that is how Mantegna lives on. I'll never get the Gonzaga family house, but I'll see this print show. I will see this library. I will see this print collection that has these beautiful images. I mean, they're exquisite 4-color woodcuts.
It makes total sense for an artist who might be painting in a sacristy, or
even if it was on a huge wall for a family's mansion.
That if you're not getting the Borgo senza Pogro, you're not going to see it. So
why not turn it into a series of prints that we can disseminate to the world and show how important we are? And that shows, number one, how incredibly savvy the artist was. Number one is how incredibly savvy the collector was, the Gonzagas, for hiring Mantegna to do this. Number 2, how smart Mantegna was in echoing all of these Greco-Roman formulas with these beautiful figures and this beautiful procession. Let's think about what reproductive prints mean in the North. I know you have a friend who is Mr. Israel van Mechenam.
I do.
Completely.
James Wen.
Hi, James. Israel van Mechenam. Now, here's a guy who made over 600 engravings in his life. 600. And the thing I love showing my students in History of Prints was that Israel van Mechenam did this portrait of himself and his wife about 1490, which is the first self-portrait ever done that we know of in the History of Prints. But I also show them Israel van Mechenam's copy of Martin Schongauer's Death of the Virgin with his Death of the Virgin. And it's interesting because, if Anne were to tell you about what she's seeing, she'd see Martin Schongauer on the left, MS, but Van Mechenam's signature is like, ooh, I'm so important. I'm going to make my signature flashier. And of course, it's in reverse, but he has looked absolutely with intense fidelity at that engraving by none other than Martin Schongauer, line for line, as best as he could. And yet he's put his own name on it. Because in those days, in 1490, there was no concept of intellectual property. This is mine. You can't copy this.
Well, it was a very early use of one's signature.
Yeah.
And the idea of copying hadn't even occurred.
How would anyone know? Now, Van Mechenam made over 600 engravings, but only about 25% are by his own hand.
Oh.
Which is interesting because they're always kind of cooler, like, the mean wife with her husband, or let's be at home and let's play our instruments together and it's okay. But none of them have the ballsy verisimilitude of what this copy of a Schongauer was. But that's because there was no idea of what original intellectual property was. It would take centuries to work that concept of, air quotes, copyright, C in a circle. It would take centuries to make that happen.
The thing that amazes me about Van Meckenem, which I didn't really know until I started talking to James Wen, he's the curator at the Chazen Museum of Art at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. And he did his dissertation on Van Meckenem.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa, scary.
Well, I know. I thought so too. It was interesting to hear him talk about the idea of copying because Van Meckenem, everything he did was copying.
Yes.
Basically. And he was sort of the front runner of copyists.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he did a good job.
And he did a good job.
Yes. What he's doing, how he transcribes. I'm going to be honest with you. When my students saw this, like, that's not cool. That's not right. Blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's there. I'm copying it. And I'm making it visible for you. And here you can buy it.
All right.
Why is that naughty?
Do you remember that at some point when I was still at the BMA, we acquired, because of one of our conservators, Tom Primo, an impression of a print by Ernst Graf of the Baptism of Christ.
Yes.
Remember?
Yep.
And he bought it because he had this hunch, which proved true.
Yep.
It related to an impression of a Baptism of Christ by Schongauer.
Yep. Yes, it did.
Right. So the crazy thing about the Ernst Graf, let's see, how did that work? So the Schongauer print had little tiny pricks along the outline of the figures that had been impressed into a copper plate to guide.
Perfect transcription.
Yeah, it was a perfect transcription, and you could just follow the dots and basically reproduce the image. And Tom did this crazy thing where he took the very high-res images and overlaid them and basically figured out that Ernst Graf had the impression of the Schongauer and had pricked through it onto his own copper plate in order to reproduce the image, which is honestly
perfect. Here's the spooky part, that the pinpricks aligned perfectly with the one we had. The beauty of that was showing the students that after 500 or 600 years, these two things matched up perfectly.
I was always in awe of the fact that we had brought them back together.
Oh, come on. That is like...
Literally like, what?
How is this possible?
Right.
600 years later, hey, look, here's the thing that inspired you to do this, and all the spots match up perfectly.
I mean, he did change the composition. That he added some space on the top and...
Better.
Well, I mean, we had definitely had lots of hours of looking at the two of them and judging whether or not the composition was improved.
Which it was.
But, I mean, it was just sort of fascinating.
No, it's freaking brilliant.
It was brilliant.
And that's unique. And I loved trumpeting the fact that that was unique to the Baltimore Museum of Art collection. That one artist could seize on the concept of another artist, grab it, but then go, but I can do a little bit more. Just a little bit more. That's what artists do. Artists go, I can stretch this. And that's what reproductive prints help us do too. Is that what's there? Oh, what more can I do? These ways of getting artists to go, I can do that. Ooh, but I can also, because the composition works so much better because it's extended and it's broader and it increases the amount of distance between the world and God. The spiritual impact of that image is doubled, tripled, quadrupled.
Yeah, it's astounding, really, and
Yes.
I hope Tom has gotten some credit for
I
identifying it.
I always gave that article out for every semester. That was brilliant research. And to be able to say, hey guys, to my MICA students, check this out. This is something you will see nowhere else but at the Baltimore Museum of Art. Here is the print that made this happen. You can see the dots, and they all line up, which made a better print.
Yeah.
That's what reproductive printmaking can do too.
Yes, right.
It opens a door. And that's a beautiful thing. So this whole reproductive print really annoys me. So let's think a moment. Now, we have talked about Marcantonio Raimondi, and we had a good time talking about him. An Italian engraver who he'd fallen in love with Dürer's prints. And let's pretend that you're standing in front of San Marco in Venice, and you see this guy. He's got a little print station, and he's selling prints that look really great. But they're actually engravings of a beautiful cycle of the life of the Virgin Mary in woodcut. Initially, they had been lives of the Virgin in woodcut by none other than Albrecht Dürer. But you're in Venice, and you're at the booth of Marcantonio Raimondi. And Marcantonio Raimondi has been recreating those same woodcuts in the thing he knows how to do, which is
Engraving.
Exactly. Now, I'm being kind of mean, but kind of not, to Anne. Because here's the thing I didn't know until today. That the original woodcuts by Dürer, it's a cycle of 20 woodcuts of the lives of the Virgin that he published in, 1505. Woodcut, which appeals to a certain audience as opposed to engraving. Those woodcuts are 17 by 12 inches. They're a good size.
What?
Somehow in my mind's eye, I'd always thought they were smaller.
Right.
But wait. Okay, so those woodcuts by Dürer are reproduced in engraving onto a copper plate by Marcantonio Raimondi, because he's Mr. Engraving. Thank you very much. And those are a convenient size of 12 by 8 inches.
What?
Yeah. And so I'm showing Anne two versions. The Dürer woodcut engraving by Raimondi. And I'm wondering what Anne,
Oh, God.
the thinker, the
Jesus.
buyer, thinks.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
Would you buy? I mean, you don't know this Albrecht Dürer dude, but you know this Raimondi guy. He's kind of hot. He's selling in this little stall outside of San Marcos.
That seems pretty easy. It's a pretty faithful, if heavy-handed reproduction.
I love that you said that.
I mean, Durer's always finessed everywhere.
Even in fucking woodcut, excuse my language.
That's a crazy woodcut.
Come on, look at that beautiful wood grain on that crossbeam there. Right?
Yes, everything is a little. Yeah.
That's woodcut.
Okay, so if you have them side by side, I think it would be easy for a buyer to understand which one they would prefer, although they might be sucked in by the idea that engraving is for a more quote-unquote higher market than the woodcut.
And it's right here in front of me, and thank you, I'm in Venice, and this is great.
But if they were side by side, which would you pick? I mean, oh gosh. I mean,
Spooky.
Knowing what I know now is different than what I would know if I was wandering along the streets of Venice and saying, hey, I think I need that image of the...
You know what? I'm such a slut, I'd take either one.
I know, I think I would too.
Because honest to God, Raimondi did a really great job.
The only thing that's really different is this...
Isn't that awful?
The other side of that one beam. That's really it.
I know. It's kind of astonishing.
It's
really.
kind of nuts.
Because,
just the one beam.
But even so, look at Raimondi is trying to match stroke by stroke what Dürer is doing.
Right.
And honestly, I'm not convinced that there's anything nefarious about what he's trying to accomplish. He just wants to get a job done.
Well, yes, there's no idea that there might be an idea of
theft
or
however
copyright.
Let's think about how pissed Dürer was when he found out that his entire cycle of 20 woodcut prints have been reproduced in engraving by some Italian dude in Venice, and he's selling them on the little market in front of San Marco.
Yeah, it's irritating.
Would you be pissed?
I would be.
Just a little bit. And here's the other thing. I'll bet these engraving plates hold up a whole lot longer than those woodblock plates.
Right.
Yep. And but the cool thing, the size of the woodcut plates honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. Today I'm like, are you kidding me? They're 17 by 12. They're big.
Big, yeah.
And that's huge for a Life of the Virgin, which was, by the way, apocryphal. We don't know
So
the
not a real part of
Yeah,
the
but we
Bible?
made it up, but it was like a neat little thing, what story we tacked on the end in the apocrypha. Yeah. But Mark Antonio
Women get
Raimondi
no
is
play.
like, there's this dude who's got some prints. His name's Albrecht Dürer, but they're coming down here and they're looking really spit hot. So I'm gonna like,
It's ballsy.
look how number one, it's ballsy. Number two, look how beautiful that perspective is.
He gets it pretty well.
Can you believe, Anne, as I show you these two images, that is woodcut on the left and that is an engraved plate on the right?
Oh.
Honestly, give Mr. Raimondi his props.
Yeah,
because,
they look identical.
yeah, that motherfucker is copying. He's doing a beautiful job. Plus, it's 12 by 8 inches, so that's a much more usable scale. I mean, at home, I don't have room for 18 by 25. That's too big. This is nice. Plus, it's engraving. You know what? Engraving is better than...
What kind?
Yep.
Right. I feel
I'm
like
smart. I know engraving is better than woodcut.
Aye.
Isn't that nuts? Honestly, the more I look at these, I think, damn, Amar, you did a fine job.
Yeah. That's kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we can, piss and moan about what he accomplished, but I will also remind you that it was Raimondi, Mark Antonio Raimondi, who was working side by side with Raphael, that gives us a portrait of Raphael, that in the engraving, thank you very much, but Raphael Sanzio, Mr. Ninja Turtle himself, hired Mark Antonio Raimondi to copy, commit to memory, to capture images that he had done for the apartments of Pope Julius II of Rome. Yeah. It's fascinating to me that Mark Antonio Raimondi, Raphael, he's a little guy, and we know he died super young, like the age that Mozart was when he died.
Raimondi?
No, Raphael died
Raphael.
like super young.
Oh, right.
But he was like, hey, Mark Antonio Raimondi, I got some drawings I want you to reproduce, and this is going to show off how spit hot I am at not only disegno, which is how I lay out a picture, but also invenzione, which is the thing that all the Italians are going batshit crazy for right now. You got to know how to lay out the design of a picture, but you also need to be creative and clever and figure out new ways to put things out there. So, Mark Antonio, here's my drawing of, let's say, and we've talked about this before, the Judgment of Paris. Exactly.
Yes.
And it's not the only one, because if I'd been Mark Antonio Raimondi, I would have been so freaking proud to be untapped by one of the 3 brightest lights of the time. Let's talk Ninja Turtles. 3 brightest lights coexisting at the time are
Leonardo,
bing, 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 bing,
Michelangelo,
bing, 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 bing,
Raphael,
bing, bing, bing.
and sadly, Donatello.
Well, but he's dead by 1466,
Right,
so that didn't even count.
He should have been Titian.
So, yes. Well, Titian does his bit with Reproductive prints too. So, I have yet to see in any, not that I'm a great scholar, but I have yet to see in any publication something that says, here is a completely original independent image by Mark Antonio Raimondi. Not a single one. Mark Antonio Raimondi was a master of being able to capture, encapsulate, codify, systematize a system of marks to create a reproduction of a Raphael, which trumpets his ability as not only a composer of a great image, but also an inventor of a concept of how many things go together. And those 2 ideas, disegno and the invenzione, were all that mattered to the Italians at the time. That's it. That's all. His job was to shove a beer in through a piece of metal. We don't have the original drawing for this, but we know what it looks like. Thank you, Mr. Raimondi, for all of these things. And thank you for being smart enough to just like score it with a little bit of pumice to make it seem a little bit more warmer for us. And everything is there. Every hair, the musculature, the heroic verisimilitude of these big strapping bodies that are perfect by Raphael. And by the way, hands up, if we were to go to the IFPDA print fair in New York this the weekend, and I'm like, here is the Raimondi of the Judgment of Paris, you can have it for $200. Done. I'll buy it. I mean, of course, what is it, 14, 16, 80,000?
I don't know what this guy.
This is absurd what this would go for.
Well, I don't know.
We don't have the Raphael drawing. We don't have the original brilliance, but we have a reproduction of the mental faculties that caused that to happen, which were the coalescence of everything that great art was supposed to be in the high Renaissance for Italian art makers.
All right. Mark Antonio is...
I mean, we did talk about him in terms of,
We did. We covered him earlier.
Emoti and how he got in trouble and he got sued for, the backdoor entry of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think when I used to pull this out for the class, I thought, what the hell is this?
I remember you going, this is so boring. You told me, this is boring.
Well, I didn't get it.
Actually, it's boring, but it's not. Because I here I'm showing Anne that the comparison of that lower right-hand corner to who?
Well, yeah, so the Figaro group on the lower right-hand corner is a woman nude sitting with her elbow on her knee, her hand on her chin, and she's looking straight at the audience. And it's directly pulled from that composition to Edouard Manet's Déjeuner sur l'herbe.
How dare Manet in 1863
How the hell did
piss
he
off
find that?
the entire Academy, Salon de Refusé, by looking at a print from 1517?
Yeah, it's astonishing. And there are more that are pulled from this.
You need to show them this. This is the reproductive print. And Manet had said, I didn't intend to set out a whole new modern. I didn't want to paint a new picture. I just wanted to paint a picture. He was,
bullshit.
Yeah, well, of course, we know now that the Luncheon on the Grass, 1863, is like the big, fist pump in the face of everything academic. She's so confident. She's looking at the, hey, hi, I'm right here.
Vulnerable. She has to be vulnerable because she's not.
No, I'm not going to let her be vulnerable. I'm going to let her be strong as hell. She's like, I got my clothes up. What the hell's wrong with you two?
I don't know. I just put myself right there going, oh, crap.
Oh, no. Those boys are seriously suffering from shrinkage.
You think?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
It's cute, though, isn't it? Because we get to have this conversation. So, okay.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode of A History of Prints on Platemark Podcast. I always need to thank True Ludwig for being our SME, our subject matter expert. Nobody does it better. And also a thank you to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music. As I mentioned at the top, all of the images we talk about are over on the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. There's also a microphone icon there that you can click and leave a message for True and me. Questions are welcome. And there is a support and donate button where you can sign on to become a $5 per month member or self-designate a one-time donation. The next time we hit Series 2, A History of Western Prints, we will continue our discussion of reproductive printmaking. This will go on for a bit. I hope you're ready. I think that's it. We'll see you next time.